7 days in, the one thing that's really that you're really excited about as a coaching staff is the work that these guys are doing. They're putting on the line every day. They're hooking it up, doing it the right way. Certainly, we've talked a lot about the youth, and those guys are going to be in important positions for us, and there's a lot of work left to do. There's a lot of things to clean up, but I firmly believe, teams that practice really hard, right, and they understand the value of the day-to-day, and they understand the work that has to be done, they'll continue to get better, and we are. So today we've got a practice, kind of tighten some things up. We'll have our first scrimmage tomorrow, which I think is always a big day. Particularly for running backs, linebackers and safeties. The first time they get to tackle, we do thud, and we do have pretty physical practice format, but it's the first time you go to the ground and do those things. So, I think it'll be really good for us to see where we're at after the first scrimmage. But so far, these guys are doing it the right way, doing it the way we ask, and we get to come to work every day and coach kids that really want to improve and want to get better. So that makes it a lot of fun. This point of camp is where you're right in the middle of it, and you start to see who's really tough. You start to see the guys that have a little bit of mental toughness, and you start to see the ones that still have a little ways to go. So for us right now, the idea is you keep making it hard, you keep making it difficult, you keep pushing buttons, and you try to figure out who you can count on. So we got some of those guys that are starting to show up, and you got some of them that, still got a little ways to go. But I think that's probably pretty typical in every camp across the country.
In this first week, what has impressed you the most about these practices?
I just think it's the intensity level at which they're working. We keep data, player load data and load management data over the course of the last 5 years. The player load, right, which is the capacity they're working at, is through the roof right now. And it's not, the format hasn't really changed. It's what they're putting into it. It's how hard they're going. It's them straining their gut and competing every day. So that's what I think when you go back and you look at it, you feel like it's really good out there. And when you go back and look at the data, it tells you that you're absolutely getting the effort that you want. And, I said it before, when we ask this team, when things don't go exactly the way you want, the only thing you do is go back to work, put your nose down and just go harder. And we've asked them to do that, and they're doing that. And I think that's what's really impressive is, they're flying around, playing fast and pushing. And that's what we're asking from them right now.
Coach, how have y'all dealt with the balance? You're in South Louisiana, so you want, when you play teams, to be at a disadvantage with the heat, and yet you don't want to practice in the heat that much with an indoor. How have you dealt with all that?
It's a good question. I think that's something that everybody's trying to manage right now. We've added breaks to the practice, number one. And it's not a big thing, but it's a 5-minute break, right? The difference in practice and in the game, you have, you get to the sideline and you've got these breaks in between series that you get to catch your breath. You get to kind of recover a little bit. In practice, you don't, right? And the idea is that practice is harder, but we add a couple more breaks in there. We practice later in the afternoon. We have been outside every day. I think that we as a staff, our training staff, our coaching staff, and our strength staff and our nutritionists work really hard to make sure that we are doing what's right for the kids, but you certainly don't want to take away the advantage that you have. And the heat is our advantage early in the year. So we do go outside every day. We do practice a little bit later than most people do. But I do think that part of it is we do our job and we make sure we're doing things to take care of our players, but we have to educate them, and they've got to do their part. Recovery is active. There's no such thing as passive recovery. So, we're blessed. We've got a great training room with all kind of tools in there for them to use. We have a nutritionist who's on them constantly about hydrating and eating the right thing. So, it's mutual. It's got to go both ways, but the players have to really work hard at it too. And they have, the first couple days, which is typical. You got a couple, you got some guys that cramp up and that are out for the rest of practice and things like that. But, after the first couple days, these guys have really handled it well. And I'm proud of them because it takes a certain level of maturity to do that. But they know that whenever we get to September, it is an advantage for us to be in those conditions and to play in those conditions, and we embrace it.
Dennis, you mentioned some of the position groups that you're really watching for in tomorrow's scrimmage, but guys like Zylon Perry and guys who maybe it was their first preseason practice with you guys last year, they're kind of going into, got a little more understanding and knowledge of kind of what it is that you guys as a coaching staff are looking for. Are there different things that you're looking for out of those players like this go around?
It's amazing how much progress, these players make in a full year, and they should, right? I mean, you have a year-round plan for them. The things that, the first year they're here, you're looking to see, will they mix it up, part of you is trying to see, do they make sure they fit, right? Once you get through a year, where they are physically, that they fit. Now it's, who's going to go out there and go compete when, it's certainly not a game, but it's a little bit amplified. And those four backs have, to this point in practice, have been really impressive. You got to go do it, whenever it's full tilt as well. So it's really the execution. And, we talked about this last night with the team. It's about competitive discipline is something that, when it all starts, when the bullets start flying and everything's going, can you slow it down? Can you focus in on what's in front of you and do your job and do it well? So that's kind of what you look for a little bit with some of those guys that maybe got a little taste of it, but you weren't really maybe depending on them. And this year you are. Who's got the competitive discipline to let what they've done in practice carry over and go and play effectively in a scrimmage and then obviously in turn in a game. So that's really what you're looking for more than anything. I don't believe that all of a sudden, a guy turns up in a scrimmage or in a game and just plays out of his mind. I mean, that doesn't happen. They do what they've done in practice over and over again. But for some guys, they're not ready for the lights. You got to make sure these guys have the discipline and the, competitive spirit to go out there and do it when it starts to mean a little bit more.
The vision that y'all had for Zylan when y'all recruited him out of Franklin as a quarterback, now that kind of like Corey was saying in that second, his skill set, what are you seeing now that, again, he's not a complimentary guy, he's going to be a main guy?
Yeah, I mean, he's got everything he needs to be that. The things that you worry about when you make a position switch, right? A guy, especially from quarterback, okay? The physical nature of playing it, even though he ran the ball effectively as a quarterback, it's not the same. It's not tight zone in the A gaps. It's play breaks down, you run around, you're always in space. So will they be physical tackle to tackle? Number two, pass protection. The guy probably never blocked anybody in his life. He's always been a skill player. So now, will they learn the pass pro? Can they learn the pass pro? Will they do the pass pro? And then some of the other things, that you really want to see is, their ability out of the backfield. Can they handle the full workload, or do you have to narrow it down for them? And Zylan's just been a pleasant surprise, and I don't want to say surprise. I mean, he's been what we thought he was. I thought he was an incredibly undervalued player coming out of high school. We were in a position where we were not going to be able to take a running back in that class. Some things happened. I mean, it was easy for us, I've been hearing about this guy for years, and, you turn on the tape and it speaks for itself. And then, you kind of get to know him, get to meet him a little bit, and you realize he's the right kind of kid. I mean, but I don't know if y'all seen him lately. I mean, he looks different. He's 200 pounds. I mean, he's done a really good job in the offseason. He's learned to love the offseason part of it, which at first was hard for him. He's just made a complete 180 turn. And, for us, we have high expectations for him, kick return game as well. There's just a lot of things that he can do for us that it's time for him to go do it. But it's like anything, nothing's ever handed. It's you got to go take it and you got to go earn it. And he's done a good job so far. So he's got to continue on that track.
Is his skill set like a Chris Smith or a Raymond Colley, or how would you kind of?
More Chris Smith. He's got more wiggle probably than what Raymond had. Raymond had elite straight line speed, which Chris was fast. Zylan's fast, but I don't know that I would say it's Raymond. But they've got more wiggle in small spaces. Zylan has the ability to make the first person miss. It's really hard whenever you got to block it exactly right. to get yards. I mean, you're talking about 5, 6, 7 guys all on the same page, all communicating, all fitting it properly. And then you're not talking about the defense, who they're getting coached too. They're getting off of blocks. So when you have one that can make the first guy miss, it kind of changes the scope of what you can do on offense. You have more opportunity to get explosive plays, right? Okay, you get them to safety and they can make the guy miss instead of getting dropped for 8. Those types of things change a game. So I would say he's probably more similar to Chris. At this point in his career, I think he's probably got a little bit he's a little more maybe physical, naturally. But Chris was the same way. I mean, Chris played quarterback, corner, he played all over the place too. But I think that's probably the best comparison is probably Chris.
Has there been anybody else besides the 4 that you mentioned that are starting to, maybe if we get a step here or there, running back wise, depth wise, anybody else step up besides?
Bill Davis is going to be a really good player. Yeah. Kendrell's coming along. I think that year has just kind of set him back a little bit, but he's getting back to what he was, which is great because, y'all saw it, right? He was a heck of a player. So he's starting to get back. But, yeah, Bill Davis is going to be what we thought too. He's got some time probably to learn it. Hopefully, if these guys can stay healthy and go do what we think they can do. But yeah, the running back room it's a good room. It really is. And, everybody kind of matures at a different time, and these guys are turning the corner right when we need them to. So it's exciting for us.
When you look at the receiver room, obviously you have guys like Peter that, are able to lead the way. Who are other guys that you are seeing that are, coming into their own to complement them?
Rob Williams is the first one that, if you ask anybody, he has been just, really electric, but really consistent, which has been Rob's thing throughout his history here is just the consistency in doing it. Rob's been phenomenal this camp, and I'm excited for him because, he's a kid who's been through a lot. It was just a work in progress, but he's like a different person right now, the way he's doing it. And I'm really proud of him for that. Tavion Smith has, he had a little knee procedure done in the middle of spring. So coming out of spring, I don't know if we really knew exactly what we had. He's been really good, he's the right type of kid. Charles Robertson's probably right behind those guys, playing really consistently, doing a good job. And then Jaden Johnson, that group is doing a good job. I think if you had to say the one, though, it would be Rob. He's making plays right now that we always knew he's capable of. We're just kind of waiting for him to do it, and he's doing it for us right now.
And with that being said, what do you think has finally clicked for him in the consistency standpoint that you mentioned about what is it that's really came on for him?
I've kind of said this before. There's no light switch. There's no, well, I'm gonna screw around in these areas and I'm gonna get to football and I'm just gonna be on point. There's no such thing. And everything kind of something carries over into the other. And even if you love football and that's what's really important to you, when you got all these other things going on, you can't go in and focus on the job that's in front of you. Rob's completely turned around the way he approaches his academics. He's completely turned around the way he approaches the off season. He's completely turned around the things that he's doing to recover and get himself back ready. And it all leads to better production on the field. You can't live a double life. It comes to light at some point. And for a guy like him, he's a great kid. He's a little immature, like a lot of them. And he had to figure all that stuff out. And, Coach Leger has done a great job. He's been patient when he needed to be patient. He's been stern when he needed to be stern. And Rob has taken the coaching. It's a two-way street. It doesn't matter how bad a coach wants it for a player until the player decides he's ready to go and do it the right way. You're always fighting uphill. Rob has made the decision, and his actions day after day after day have held up to the decisions that he's made. So he's just made a 180 in everything that he does, and that's the fun part about coaching, to be quite honest with you. You get some guys that come in day one and they do it right from day one. That's fun. It's easy. But, the ones that figure it out and that end up going out there and doing what you knew they could do, that's where the fun of it comes in.
Anything else for Coach? Pierce was here on Wednesday,
Mhm.
and he was rattling off names on the saying what he liked about them, and it was a pretty long list. Obviously, you're very familiar with that. I mean, you talked about how good your tight end, but he made it sound like it might be deeper than even we were talking about a few weeks ago.
It's a really good group. You got a couple guys that have been here for a while that, really kind of fit what we're talking about with Rob. Had to figure it out a little bit. Jathan Caldwell is, extremely talented. He's got his rock music, his theme music going, and I tell you what, some guys. Jathan's been just, phenomenal. Like, he's another guy that, he had to figure out if he wanted to be here, right? Red Guidry really went through the same things. Both those guys are making tremendous progress. I think when you go to the two freshmen that we signed, though, those guys are going to be pretty special. Obviously Pierce and Terrence and Neil, everyone knows the way we feel about them, but these two young freshmen are they're going to be special. That's a hard position to play. They don't make mistakes. They have, really good, ability in the pass game, way better in the run game than you'd ever expect a high school kid to come out and be. If we weren't, in such a good situation, those guys could play this year. I believe that, and they may, right? You never know how things go. But, yeah, that group has come along. And, it's some older guys that have been here that it was time for them to figure it out. And then there's some newcomers that, did a good job in evaluating the fit for us. And those guys certainly do fit. So it's a fun group, man. I love tight end play. That's something that, we've worked really hard to implement and make better in our offense, and those guys fit it.
The defensive line was compared to the $72. Anyone else on the team worthy of being compared to all-time greats?
I wasn't born in 72, so I'm not going to make that comparison. No, I'm not big into comparisons, predictions. Like, I'm really proud of the effort that's been put in. Like, I am really proud of the growth in this team. We can be really honest with them and give them, feedback that, they probably maybe don't want to hear at times, and they take it and they go make corrections. There's a lot of guys out there that are battling right now, battling for positions. Right now, nobody feels great. You're 7 days in camp. Nobody's 100%. You got a lot of guys that are battling through those things. But for us, I know, we do have some key spots where you need to stay healthy, on the O-line. We have some good young players coming up, but, we need to stay healthy there with the guys that we've got. In the secondary, it's the same thing. You got some really good young corners that are going to be ready. You hope that these older guys can, stay healthy where those guys have time to develop on their own. But for us, that's part of the game, and our job is to get them all ready. So, the guys that are going the third group, they're getting coached as hard as the first group, and some of them handle it better than others, especially when they're young. But we have a good team. We have a chance to have a really good team. If we can stay focused on what's important. No, we kind of have it scripted out a little bit, but there's a couple of things that aren't scripted. A 2-minute drill is not scripted necessarily. How many plays? Our red zone period's not scripted. How many plays? I think ideal world, the guys that, the O-line, D-line, O-line, the guys that play every play, if they could play about a half a game, 35, 40 snaps would be great. And that way you can get in, get out, see where you're at when the coaches are off the field and it's just them. And, like I said, see who's got a little bit of competitive discipline and who can go out there and do it, when it matters.